Hello everyone. Today we will discuss about the nerve physiology. First of all, as we all know, the neurons are the structure and the functional unit of the nervous system. Around 1 trillion neurons or the nerve cell are present in the normal human being brain. Now the structure of the neurons. Okay. Now the neurons are actually considered different in shape, size and other features in a different manner. And the common features or the common parts of the neurons are, first of all, as you can see, this is the cell body. Okay, this cell body, the cell body is also known as the perikaryon or the soma. Okay, and there are neurites present. Okay, the neuron primarily consists of the cell body and process is known as the neurites. So what are the neurites? Neurites are the dendrites and this axon. So this entire axon known as the neurites of the nerve or the nerve cell. Now first of all, perikaryon or the nerve or the cell body or the soma, they are round, stellate, pyramidal or fusiform in the shape, and like any other cell, it consists of a mass of cytoplasm with all its principal constituents surrounded by cell membrane. Now this cell body or the perikaryon contains a large nucleus over here in the center with 1 to 2 nucleoli present in it, but there are no centrosome. So because they don't have centrosome, they are not able to divide. Okay, so what if this neuron actually gets destroyed or is not able to function? So this neuron will ultimately get useless, and in spite of this, neuroglia or the neuroglias will come into action. Okay, but the neurons are not able to divide. So if this neuron is damaged, so this neuron won't be able to divide, and of course it will not be further used. Now that this cell body has contained mainly 3 things, okay, which are important to remember. Now first is the nasal granules, pigment granules and the neurofibrils. Okay, so first, what is nasal granules? The cell body has nasal granules. Okay, now they are basophilic granules that seem to be composed of rough surface endoplasmic reticulum. Nasal granules and is made up of the endoplasmic reticulum. Now the nasal body are present in the dendrites as well as in the cell body, means they are present in the dendrite and cell body, but they won't be present in the axon hillock. This is the axon hillock. This is the axon hillock. It actually generates only this place only the generation of the nerve impulse occurs. Okay, and this is actually an extension of the cell body. Okay, which actually continues as axon. This axon. Okay, so the nasal body are present in the dendrites and the cell body, not in the axon hillock or the axon. Now the neurofibril, as the name says, fibril, it means the filaments. So they are the microfilaments and the microtubules, and in certain degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, remember in the Alzheimer's, the neurofilament protein get altered, resulting in the formation of the neurofibrillary tangles. So neurofibrils are converted into neurofibrillary tangles in the Alzheimer disease. Now next is the pigment granules. As the name says, pigment granules means they have pigment. These are seen in some of the neurons only. For example, in the neuromelanin is present in the neurons of the substantia nigra. What is substantia nigra? It is mainly present in the midbrain and it is actually a basal ganglion. And their main function is for the memory and their main function is for the movement and the reward. So substantia nigra contains the neuromelanin. And during the aging neurons contains a pigment known as the lipofuscin. Remember the word lipofuscin present in the aging neuron. So this was all about the neuron structure. The dendrites, cell body, cell membrane, cell body. Okay. Now the dendrites. Now dendrites are multiple and small branch processes which are actually branch processes, the neurites, which are going in various directions from the cell body, and they contain, as I told you before, they have nasal granules and the neurofibril as well. The dendrites are the receptive processes of the neuron which actually receive the signal from the other neuron via the synapses with the axon of the other neuron. Okay. And what is the axon? This is the axon. The axon is a single long process of the nerve cell. It varies in length from a few micron to a meter. It originates from the conical extension of the cell body or the soma. Okay, this is the axon hillock. Okay, which is devoid of nasal body, I told you before. Now, the part of the axon between the axon hillock and the beginning of the myelin sheet. Okay, this is the axon hillock, the triangular portion. This is the myelin sheet. So the portion between the axon hillock and the first myelin sheet is known as the initial segment. In the axon, the cell membrane constitutes as exolemma and the cytoplasm is known as the exoplasm. While over here it was cytoplasm, but over here it will be exoplasm and the exolemma. Now, as you can see over here, this is the axon terminal or known as the synaptic knobs. Okay, or we can say the axon telodendria. So this has mainly three names. Okay, and it ends by this axon terminals, and this synaptic knobs or the axon telodendria or the axon terminal or the buttons, they contains various of the microvesicles which actually contains chemical neurotransmitters. And during any kind of stimulation, when stimulation occurs, so the nerve impulse passes from this, and this will actually stimulates the release of the neurotransmitters from the vesicles. Now the myelin sheet over here, as you can see, this is the myelin sheet. Myelin sheet is present around the axon, and so the axon is known as a myelinated nerve fiber. Okay, if the axon has myelin sheet over it, the nerve fiber is known as the myelinated, and if not, unmyelinated. Okay, now what is myelin sheet? Now it is actually a protein lipid complex. Okay, and is produced by the glial cells known as the Schwann cells. Okay, now just remember, in the PNS, in the peripheral nervous system, Schwann cells forms the myelin sheet around the axon in the peripheral nervous system, while in the CNS, central nervous system, oligodendrocytes, okay, it is also glial cell only. Okay, so they will form the myelin sheet. So in PNS, Schwann cells, and in the CNS, oligodendrocytes. Now this myelin sheet is mainly formed by the Schwann cells which encircle the axon, forming around it a thin sleeve. Now each Schwann cell provides a myelin sheet for a short segment of the axon, and this, as you can see, the space between these myelin sheet is known as a road of Danvers. Okay, and this actually causes saltatory movement of the nerve impulse. What is saltatory movement? This jumping of the impulses onto the road of Danvers is known as the saltatory movement, and this is the very convenient and the fastest movement, okay, which actually increases the velocity of the passage of the nerve impulses. And just remember, the nerve fibers or this neuron or the nerve cell actually follows the all or none mechanism. What is all or none mechanism? Either this nerve cell will propagate the impulse or either will not. Okay, they will propagate only when a particular threshold stimulus is applied to them, or either they will not. Now the types of neurons, it may depend on two, depending on the function and depending on the myelination. On the function, they may be motor, okay, or maybe sensory. Motor are the efferent nerve cells which actually carries the motor impulses from the CNS, central nervous system, to peripheral effector organ like muscle gland or blood vessel. Okay, over here remember, the neurons have a very long axon and a short dendrite. Means the axon in the motor, this axon in the motor is very long, while the dendrites is short. While in the sensory, the efferent nerve cells actually carries the nerve impulse from the effector organ to the CNS. Okay, and of course there will be reverse of the motor. That means over here the axon will be shorter and the dendrites would be longer. So just understand the difference. Now depending on the myelination, it may be myelinated or non-myelinated. Okay, if the myelination is present, so this one, if not, then this. Now the neuroglia. What is neuroglia? They are the glial cells, okay, also known as supporting cells of the nerve cell. Okay, they actually support the nerve cells. Okay, they are present within the brain and the spinal cord. Okay, these are numerous glial cells, about 10 times more than the neurons. In our brain, I told you before, there are around 1 trillion neurons. So even 10 times more than that, neuroglia are present in the brain and the spinal cord. Now they are mainly of two types. macroglia and microglia. Now the macroglia or the large glial cells are ectodermal in origin, just remember, and the microglia, they are the mesodermal in origin. They are ectodermal in origin and they are mesodermal in origin. And these macroglia are of mainly two types, astrocyte and oligodendrocytes. Okay, astrocyte are further of two types, fibrous and protoplasmic. Over here, as you can see, this is the astrocyte. Okay, the astrocytes are mainly connected with the nearby arteries also, as you can see over here, the astrocytes. Okay, and the oligodendrocytes, they are mainly connected with the axon, as you can see. Okay, next is the microglia. Macroglia or the small glial cells are mesodermal in origin, told before. These are the smallest neuroglial cell, have a flattened cell body in a short process. These are more in number in the grey matter than in the white matter. Okay, now the grey matter and white matter, you may know. White matter means they will have myelinated nerve fibers, that means axon, and the grey matter has the cell body. Now they act as phagocytes and become active after damage to nervous tissue by trauma or disease. So whenever there is trauma or disease of your brain, okay, or the spinal cord, this microglia will come into action and will cause phagocytosis process. And over these are the macroglia. We have one more, ependymal cells. Okay, they are also a type of neuroglia only, ependymal cells. Now next is the peripheral nerve. What is this? Now a compact bundle of the axon located outside the CNS is known as the nerve. As you can see, these are small axons. Okay, the bundle of the axon which are present outside the CNS is known as the peripheral nerves. So these are formed by the bundle of the we can say nerve cell, and that to the axons. Now each axon, as you can see, this is axon. So each axon is actually covered by an endoneurium. Okay, this is the endoneurium. This one, in this you can see, this is the endoneurium. Okay, and it is bounded internally and externally also, means there is endoneurium also, and internal you can see two lines, two circles also. Okay, the inner one is the basal lamina of the Schwann cells, and the next one is the basal lamina of the perineurium. This is the perineurium. So it is the basal lamina of the perineurium. Okay, now each fasciculus, this is the fasciculus. These are the fasciculus, the whole bundle. So each fasciculus is covered by a perineurium, and the cell of the perineurium are highly adherent and act as a barrier to the passive particulate traces. Now the whole nerve is actually covered by the epineurium. Okay, epineurium, which is tubular sheet formed by areolar membrane. Now the electrical property of nerve fiber, very important for question answers. Now first of all, the electrical property contains two main properties, that means the excitability and the conductivity. Now what is excitability? It is mainly the generation of the nerve impulse in the cell body, which is mainly occur by the going above the threshold level, and the excitability mainly causes nerve impulse, that is the action potential. Well, the conductivity is the actual propagation of the action potential that was caused by the excitability, this process. So means this produces the AP, and this propagates the AP from the nerve fiber to from the nerve cell to the another nerve cell. Okay, so now what is excitability? Just remember, formation of the action potential whenever the mechanical, thermal, chemical or the electrical stimulus is applied above the threshold level. Now before going in further detail, let's talk about first of all the RMP. What is RMP? RMP is the resting membrane potential, also known as a state of polarization. Okay, now it is -70 for the nerve fibers. RMP is -70, very important for MCQs. Okay, now how this RMP is actually studied for a particular thing. Now in this we will use two things, that is a microelectrodes and the cathode ray oscilloscope. As you can see, this is the cathode ray oscilloscope and two electrodes. Okay, so now as you can see, we all know outside the nerve fiber we have positive charge, and inside this we have negative charge. So how it is studied? Now if you put the two electrodes on the surface of the nerve fibers, so of course you can see there is no change in the cathode ray oscilloscope. Okay, because positive and positive, no AP will occur, no impulse will occur. But when you can see over here, when the one electrode is present outside and others is actually put inside, so this is negative. This will cause the RMP. Okay, so RMP is the resting membrane potential, that actually shows the potential, or actually the potential of a nerve fiber when no stimulus is applied on that particular nerve fiber. Now this RMP is actually changed by the action potential. What is action potential? It is the sequential changes that occurs in the resting membrane potential of a nerve fiber when a particular threshold stimulus is applied. Now it has mainly two phases, depolarization and the repolarization. Okay, now what is depolarization? In short, I'll tell you. Depolarization, that means it is the change in the resting membrane potential. That means from the -70, the action potential will actually reach up to -55, and then up to 0, and then up to +35. So this going up for the positivity, or the change in the RMP from the negative to the positive one, is known as the depolarization state. Now what is repolarization? Now after depolarization, within a few seconds or the microseconds, the action potential which was positive, that means from the -7 to +35, it will again try to reach back to its RMP. So that pathway from the +35 to the reaching to the RMP is known as a repolarization phase. Now first of all, the phase is a component in the action potential. First of all, RMP we all know it is -70. Okay, so now first of all, these are the phases that occurs during any kind of action potential, which are mainly two things, depolarization and repolarization. Now first of all, RMP is, you can see this is -70. Let's look at the diagram. -70. Now stimulus artifact, mild deflection, very mild. Okay, even you can't see over here. This is a very mild deflection that occurs over here somewhere. It occurs when just a stimulus is applied. This is mainly done because this is mainly seen because actually there is a current leakage between the stimulating electrode and the recording electrode. So because of that, a very short leakage of current occurs, which actually causes a very slight deflection, very slight. We can't even see in this graph. Now the latent period. This is a short isoelectric period following the stimulus artifact. It represents the interval between the application of the stimulus, remember, and the onset of the action potential. Okay, so even this is not seen much. Okay, and it mainly depends on two things. Remember, the velocity of the action potential and the distance between the site of stimulus and the site of recording. Okay, this is the latent period. Even this is not visible much. This is this. You can see this portion, the line can be considered as the latent period. Okay. Next is the firing level. Now it is the main phase of depolarization, where the depolarization actually starts. So up till here it was a latent period, and after this is the firing level over here. This is the firing level after the latent period. Now in this firing level, the action potential actually gets positive and reaches up to -55. Okay, and this is comparatively slower, and after this there is sudden increment in the positivity of the action potential. So now next is the overshoot. Rapidly goes up from the 0 to the +35, means from the -55 in the overshoot it will suddenly reach up to 0 and then up to -35. Okay, now this is the overshoot. Now the spike potential. Spike potential is actually the phase where there is completion of the depolarization and the onset of the repolarization. This phase is known as the spike potential over here. Now after depolarization state. Now in this state, this very slow repolarization phase, which follows a rapid fall in the spike potential and extends up to attaining the RMP level. Means up to here, this is the after depolarization. Now last is the after hyperpolarization. After reaching the resting membrane potential, the potential further falls and becomes more negative. Reach up to -52. Okay, -72. Sorry, this is up to -72. This is known as the after hyperpolarization. Okay, and after this again the RMP is restored. So remember one thing, after depolarization is also known as the negative after potential, and this is a negative after potential, and this after hyperpolarization is also known as the positive after potential, negative after potential and positive. Now let's talk about the ionic basis of the action potential. Means all this thing actually occurs because of the sodium and potassium and all the channels, okay, and the leakage of that. So first of all, polarization means the RMP state. Now as we all know that over here, as you can see, the nerve cell has mainly positive charge in the ECF or the extracellular fluid and negative in the ICF, as you can see. Okay, so this is the polarization phase. At this point, the sodium ions, though they're outside, okay, and there are many of the sodium ions present in the outside, so of course you may think that they can easily come inside, right? But because this membrane of the nerves is is strictly impermeable to the sodium ions, is strictly impermeable to sodium ions, as because of it they can't come inside in the polarization state. The next is the depolarization phase, when a particular threshold level, okay, this threshold level is over here up to -55, and then above this, what happens is the permeability of the sodium ions increases, okay, of the cell of the nerve membrane, okay, and so the sodium ions slowly start coming inside. So what happens? Depolarization will occur. So as you can see, as the depolarization occurs, more and more sodium ions start coming inside. Startingly, the sodium ion input is less, but as the depolarization increases, so this will cause more and more sodium ion coming inside, which will cause rapid depolarization state known as the overshoot. More and more sodium ions are coming inside the this membrane inside the nerves. Now next is for repolarization state. Repolarization state occurs due to further decrease in the sodium influx and potassium efflux. So the voltage gated potassium channels, in short, sodium ions decreases to come inside and potassium ion decreases to go outside. Okay, and later on the sodium ions channel actually closes and the potassium still works on. Now after depolarization state, this is due to the fact that the rate of potassium influx slows down and the last where the slow depolarization occurs due to slow efflux of the potassium ions. Now the hyperpolarization, that means excess going down, means up to -72 is the after hyperpolarization. This mainly occurs because the sodium efflux is not stopped completely as the now the hyperpolarization, now this over here, this is the hyper after hyperpolarization -72 reach, okay, over here. Now this is mainly occurred because the sodium efflux, so sodium influx actually has stopped, okay, but the potassium efflux, sodium influx is stopped, but potassium efflux or the going out of the potassium is still working on and it is very slow. So because of that, still the potassium ion are going outside. So as because of that, it will reach up to -72 and it will stop when the potassium channel also stops. The final ion distribution is brought to the resting state by the action of the sodium-potassium pump and the leak channels, that is the potassium and the calcium channels. Characteristics of the nerve excitability. Now first of all, the strength duration curve. Now this is the strength and the duration, and this is the graph of the strength duration curve. Now it is mainly studied by mainly the varying duration of the stimulus and finding out the threshold stimulus for a particular duration. Now it has mainly two things, Rheobase and the Cronexi. What is Rheobase? This is the Rheobase, this red line. It is a minimum intensity of the stimulus which is applied for a particular enough amount of time, known as the utilization time, at which the response occurs. Now what is Cronexi? This is the Cronexi. 2 into Rheobase is known as the Cronexi. Minimum duration, it is a minimum intensity, and this is the minimum duration for which double the Rheobase occurs to apply, which occurs to cause the action potential, okay, or the nerve excitability. Now one more important thing is that this Cronexi is actually an index of excitation. For example, I can say that the nerve fiber has a small amount of Cronexi as compared to the muscle fiber, which actually suggests that the Cronexi actually shows the excitability process, and in the and its value is less for nerve fiber. So means nerve fiber excites at a very faster level, at a very easier level, and very small duration as compared to the muscle fiber. So whosever Cronexi level is less, the excitability of particular thing is more. So nerve fiber has more excitability as compared to the muscle fiber. Also, when a stimulus of a weaker intensity than the Rheobase, this is the Rheobase, if I apply stimulus less than this, then it will not produce a response no matter how long the stimulus is applied, because the Rheobase is a small stimulus itself, okay, for a longer duration of time. But below this, nothing happens. Stimulus of an extremely short duration will not produce any response no matter how that intense it was. If I will take the intensity up to highest level, but the time duration of it is very negligible, then also nothing will happen. So both intensity and duration are important for a particular stimulus to act on a particular nerve. The next is the all or none response. This actually shows, as the name says, all or none. Either the nerve fiber will produce the nerve impulse or it will not. If the stimulus is below the sub-threshold level, means less than the threshold level, then the action potential won't be generated and won't cause any kind of excitability. That is the none response. What is all response? That means if I am applying a stimulus at a very high level, more than the capacity of the nerve fiber, okay, then also there will be no response. That is the all. So means a particular response is required, a particular level of response is required for a particular nerve fiber to stimulate. Okay, now next is the membrane excitability during action potential. Over here, we will apply stimulus during the action potential. That means we will apply any kind of stimulus when the action potential is actually in continuous pathway. Okay, it is not completed. So at different stages, we will find different types of actions or different types of things will occur when we will apply stimulus during the action potential. So it is divided into three parts: refractory period, supernormal period, and the subnormal period. Now in the refractory period, we have further two parts, that is the absolute refractory period and the relative refractory period. In the absolute refractory period, we will apply the stimulus during the latent period. Okay. In the relative refractory period, there is a correspondence between the ARP and the after depolarization. In the supernormal, in the after depolarization, and the subnormal after hyperpolarization. Okay. So just remember, in this during the latent period, whatever amount of stimulus you will apply, there won't be any kind of change in the that means the stimulus won't occur, the impulse won't occur. While in the relative refractory period, okay, if you will apply stimulus of very high amount, okay, so because of that high amount stimulus, the sodium channel will actually open a little bit, okay, and the sodium influx occurs. While over here, that doesn't occur because of the normal level of stimulus, so sodium channel doesn't open. While in the supernormal period, they actually corresponds with the after depolarization phase, and over here during this period the membrane is hyperexcitable, so the threshold of the stimulus is decreased. So even at a very small pressure or a small stimulus, there we will get a very high amount of AP. In the subnormal period, the membrane excitability is very low, so threshold level of the stimulus is increased. We have to apply a large amount of stimulus, and it corresponds with the after hyperpolarization states. Now the accommodation. What is accommodation? We have studied that when a stimulus of a sufficient strength at the threshold level is applied quickly, then the action potential is produced. Okay. However, when the stimulus strength is increased slowly to the firing level, no action potential is produced. Means we need to apply a stimulus above the threshold level at a very higher, quickly. Okay. While when you will apply same amount of stimulus, okay, but for longer duration, it won't cause any kind of action potential. So this phenomena is known as the adaptation to the stimulus and called as the accommodation, because we are applying stimulus but slowly in a very for a long duration. So the nerve fiber actually very used to or adapted to that particular stimulus, so it won't cause any kind of change in the action potential. This is mainly because of the slowly opening of the sodium channels and delayed closing of the potassium channels. Now last is the infatigability. A nerve fiber cannot get fatigued even if it is stimulated for a long time. This property of infatigability is due to the fact that during the action potential, neither a fresh impulse can be generated nor the action potential can be conducted through the nerve fiber. Means whenever the action potential, means where there is running action potential, during the action potential, new impulse cannot be generated and the action potential cannot be conducted through the nerve fiber. So that's why it doesn't get fatigue. It do its work, it's one work at one time only. Now the conductivity. The propagation of the impulse in the form of the waves of the depolarizations of nerve fiber is known as the conductivity. Till now we studied the formation of the nerve impulse. Now conductivity is the propagation of it. The propagation, it may be of two types: unmyelinated fiber and the propagation through the myelinated nerve fiber. In unmyelinated nerve fiber, there won't be kind of myelin sheet, so the nerve fiber has to the stimulus, the action potential has to pass through the whole length of the axon in a straight line. Okay, while in the myelinated nerve fiber, okay, there will be saltatory movement. That means the impulse had to jump from the myelin sheet. Okay, and this impulse jump from the one node to the another, means the node of Ranvier. So the speed of conduction in the myelinated fiber is 50 to 100 times faster than the unmyelinated fibers. So this is much faster than this, 50 to 100 times faster than the unmyelinated. Next is the orthodromic and antidromic. What is orthodromic? That means in the same direction. Okay, normally the impulse in the this neurons passes from the dendrites to the axon, right, and then to the axon terminals. But in antidromic condition, the reverse thing occurs, from the axon to the dendrites, and this mainly occurs in the blood, or we can say it mainly occurs in the sensory nerve supply, the blood vessel. The sensory nerve that supplies the blood vessel is actually antidromic. So remember this. Now the compound action potential. Now first of all, before going this, now the velocity of the conduction of the nerve impulse in a nerve cell, okay, is mainly depends on main three things. The velocity depends on three things. First of all, the temperature. Okay, if the temperature is increased, velocity is decreased. Now the axon diameter. When the diameter of the axon increases because of the axolemma spreading, okay, so the increased diameter actually increases the velocity. And myelination, I told you before that in myelinated there will be saltatory movement, so it is 50 to 100 times faster as compared to the unmyelinated nerve fiber. Now the compound action potential. Now first of all, it is the monophasic recording of the action potential from a mixed nerve. What is mixed nerve? It actually contains different types of nerve fiber with varying diameters. So therefore, the compound action potential represents an algebraic summation of all or none action potential of all the nerve fibers that actually forms the mixed nerve fiber. Okay. Now the response of this is that the stimulus depends on the threshold of the individual axon in the nerve and the distance from the stimulating electrode. Means it actually depends on two things. That means the threshold of the individual axon, because in the mixed nerve, over here mixed nerve is used, so that's why in the mixed nerve there are further many kind of axons. So each axon have its own all or none mechanism and threshold level. Okay, so depends on threshold level of each individual axon and the distance from the stimulating electrode. Okay, and the feature of its main feature is that it has a unique shape. Okay, mainly the multiple peak shape, because a mixed nerve fiber is made up of different fibers with varying speed of conduction. Now the classification of the nerve fibers. Now first of all, the latter classification of the Erlanger and Gesser. This is mainly done on the basis of two things, that is the velocity conduction of the nerve fiber and the diameter. So the type A, velocity is the fastest and the diameter of this is the largest out of all the three types. Okay, diameter is largest, it is fastest and myelinated as well. It has both motor and sensory nerve fibers and is of alpha, beta and gamma type, gamma and delta type. Okay, so these are the examples: A, alpha, beta, gamma and delta type, and these are the functions of this. You can refer this image, this is the easiest one. Now next is the type B. It is slower than the A but is fast. It is myelinated and they mainly form the preganglionic autonomic efferent fibers. Okay, and efferent fiber and also from efferent fiber from the skin, viscera and the free nerve endings from the connective tissue of the muscle. And the last is type C, slowest and the unmyelinated, diameter is the smallest, and the postganglion nerve fibers for the pain, thermoreceptor and the viscera. So remember over here preganglionic autonomic efferent, and but the efferent nerve fibers takes fiber from the skin, viscera and the connective tissue of the muscles, while over here postganglionic takes from the sensation from the pain, thermoreceptors and from the viscera. So for this diagram, this is the function over here, very simple. Now next is the numerical classification. Over here numerically they are classified on the basis of 1, 2, 3 and 4 numbers. Okay, and the one is divided into 1A and 1B. Okay, and these are the origins. And Now next is the susceptibility of the fibers to hypoxia, pressure and local anesthetics. Now over here in hypoxia, most one is the type B of the letter classification of the Erlanger and Gesser. For the pressure, type A, and for local anesthetics, type C. So over here, as you can see, for local anesthetics, type C is the mostly used and the most susceptible. So that's why they are very useful for the surgical intervention under the local anesthesia. Okay. So this was all about the nerve. I hope so almost all the topics of the nerve are covered in this particular video. I'll make one separate video for regeneration and degeneration of the nerve fibers. Okay, hope you understood it well. Thank you so much.